Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast, your one-stop shop for daily Miami Heat content. I'm your host, Amir. Today, we have a great show lined up. We have Martel back. Everybody knows Martel. You can find him at the Miami Heat Zone podcast. And there's been a lot of noise, Martel, around the Jimmy Butler situation. And so we wanted to do a crossover episode, if you will. And we have a special guest joining us today. We have Daniel Greer, who covers the Memphis Grizzlies. So thanks for hopping on, Daniel. Appreciate the time.
No doubt, man. Listen, I'm excited. Everybody should be excited. It's trade season. So everybody kind of get the trade fingers ready. We might be figuring some things out today.
This could be like one of the most historic trade deadlines in the history of sports. Who knows if a Zion or a player like that can also get traded? Because we know Jimmy Butler obviously has demanded a trade request, and he's the guy who demanded one, yet he's the one who has not been traded. So it's kind of interesting because Fox technically never came out and demanded a trade. Neither did Luka. But before we do get started, Daniel, can you real quick introduce the audience? Because I know you have a great post-game show, Grizz 901 Live. And so I want to make sure the guys can find you online as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So, yeah, we are Grizz 901. We're live post-game show for the Grizzlies. As soon as the buzzer sounds, we go live immediately. We're only usually Monday through Friday. We went live late last night just because I had nothing better to do. My kids were asleep. My wife was asleep. So I called my buddy and said, hey, let's do one tonight. So it was a little bonus episode, but normally it's just Monday through Friday, but it's at Grizz 901 Live on Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks again for hopping on. Appreciate it. So like I mentioned, there's been a lot of noise around Jimmy Butler and trade rumors, including some speculation about whether the Memphis Grizzlies could be a landing spot. And so, according to The Athletic, though, I think this was today, they said that Memphis hasn't technically made an official offer for Jimmy Butler. They've had conversations with the Miami Heat's front office, but it sounds like they're even hesitant to give up with not so much inquire Jimmy, but giving up promising young assets or draft capital. So from your perspective and the Grizzlies' perspective, do you even think there is real traction, or a potential trade that can still happen for Jimmy Butler to the Grizzlies?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a trade that could happen. I also say what you're hearing is lies. The fact that Jimmy Butler and his camp are coming out and saying, hey, we're not anywhere but Memphis, that's because there has been a trade on the table. People kind of have accepted and saying, okay, the Miami Heat organization is saying, hey, we're kind of interested in that. Like we're thinking that actually might be the route we go. And so now I bet we're seeing Jimmy Butler and his camp saying, let's pump the brakes on Memphis, anywhere but Memphis. And I think that's because there was somewhat of a trade sent over that the Miami Heat organization at least interested them the most at the time.
So what do you think is a realistic trade package when you really look at the Memphis Grizzlies? Only because, you guys have guys like Jalen Wells and G.G. Jackson. And to think if you're going to give up those two, young guys, but then you're also able to keep Ja, Baines, and Triple J, I think that's fair. So what's a realistic trade package, from the Grizzlies' perspective?
A realistic trade package would never, ever, ever include GG or Jalen Wells. It might include Vince Williams, but I don't know if he's the guy that's going to move the needle anywhere in general. But he's a guy that he's on a cheap contract. He's, kind of over exceeding a little bit of what his value is right now. But he's been hurt. And so he won't be back before the trade deadline. So I don't know if he would be even including that. But I don't think there's any young guys that would go out. I think that just around this would have to be Marcus Smart, who has another year remaining. Brandon Clark, who's got 2 years remaining at $12.5 million, and then Luke Kennard, who's on an expiring. There's some other guys you can throw in there, but I don't think any of them move the needle. Those are the only three that would even be on the table, in my opinion, because it's a 20 to 25 game rental, in all honesty. And so I don't know why at Memphis, if you're not willing to extend this guy, which that's understood on both sides, and that's hence the reason Jimmy doesn't want to do it, then why in the world would you even do this for your young assets? Even though Jimmy is awesome. I love Jimmy. Okay. I don't love regular season Jimmy. I love playoff Jimmy.
We don't either.
We don't need Jimmy in the regular season. We need a playoff Jimmy, in all honesty. But I just don't know if they're willing to come off of those young guys. And I definitely don't expect Jalen Williams or GG to be included in that.
Now, do you think that Triple J is better than Bam Adebayo? Because, we always see these things going back and forth with DPOY. I mean, I definitely think that Triple J has a lot more help than Bam, especially on the defensive end. But what do you think? And plus, Zach Edey's been great for you guys. But what do you think about Bam being better than Triple J?
So Bam's girlfriend is a lot better than Jaren's because he doesn't have one. So I'll definitely give the edge to Bam there. Last year, I was on the camp of saying Bam was better than Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, after last season, and then able to be on a bad team and do those numbers is one thing for Jaren. Being on a good team and still putting up the exact same numbers, if not a little tick better, I think that Jaren has taken his leap officially, and I think he's kind of jumped over ahead of Bam just for the fact that he can stay on the court without being in foul trouble so much. But his offensive back has just kind of taken leaps and bounds this year. And I think that's where he set himself apart. It's not very far in front of Bam. I think Bam's great. I just don't think that Bam's able to be the alpha that Jaren has shown this year. I think Bam is still a good running mate. I think he still needs his mate to run with, though. And I don't know if Jaren needs that right now.
So kind of to stay on topic, so do you think he is kind of like a 1B like alpha type guy? Because I haven't been watching many Memphis games, but how has his growth impacted this team's future? Because obviously it seemed like this is Jaw's team, but obviously he's had some issues off the court in the past, but then he's also been injured, quite a bit in his young career. So he's been great these last 2 seasons. I agree. I think he has leaped. He's taken that official leap. It's being consistent now, and he's averaging 23 points. He's obviously a really good two-way player, I think. Not as good of a facilitator as Bam Adebayo, but a better three-point shooter, better rim protector. But what are your thoughts on like his growth and how that's going to impact the way this team can compete in the years to come?
Yeah, so you can definitely say he's a 1B this year. He is the 1A most of this season. And Ja has to take a back seat. There's a reason that Jaren has received the numbers that he's received this year, but also now the All-Star bid as a reserve, because Josh shown up and seen this freak, this unicorn, and he's able to do the things he's doing. And Josh having to say, "Hey, all right, let's go ahead and feed you." And that's kind of what he's doing. It's helped Josh stay healthy, I guess, but it's also not helped Josh stay healthy because he's had his own issues. But I will say that Jaren now, I think he's taken that leap, and I think he's solidified himself as being as consistent as he's been. But mainly it has been on the offensive end where he can kind of make some extra moves that he hadn't and wasn't able to make 2 years ago. And so this team, leadership wise, it needs Ja Morant, because Jaren Jackson Jr. wants to wear nice outfits. He wants to have a fairly decent rap album. But for the most part, he is kind of the beta when it comes to being on the court. Like, he wants to be the guy I think he's the vice president of the Players Association. Like, he's that guy. Like, he wants to kind of take the back seat, be the nice guy on the court. He's awesome, but they still need the alpha, and that is Ja.
So with a stacked up Western Conference, because you guys are second, doesn't this kind of put pressure on you guys to maybe even pivot from Jimmy Butler? Because think about it. I mean, you have the Thunder. I think that they're great, but what do you think about the probability of the Memphis Grizzlies coming out of the West when you do have the Rockets, which I think right now they're a huge dark horse for Jimmy Butler. Especially how he is a Texas native. You have a lot of teams. I mean, obviously now he's not going to the Spurs, but then also to Jimmy Butler has also been linked to the Nuggets. So there's plenty of teams. And maybe, the Memphis Grizzlies perspective is, why don't we get him so someone else doesn't get him? You know what I mean? So what do you think about the Memphis Grizzlies coming out of the West this year?
Wow. It scares me. And I have been against this team on the court for the simple fact that their offense is very much a free flow. One of my guys, and it might be not the right thing to say, but he calls it the communist offense, where everybody eats, everybody gets to kind of do their thing, and everybody scores. You can't have that in the playoffs. And I think that's understood. So my thing is, as of today, I think they can win a first round. Depending on the matchup in the second round, I give them a 50-50 shot for sure. But if you have to go up against the Houston Rockets or the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I don't think they're so far in a way better than everybody else, they're just a really good regular season team. They don't match up well with them. They didn't match up good with the Lakers, but now the Lakers are a little different. They didn't match up good with the Mavs, but now the Mavs are a little different. And so I think that they're right there with everybody, and I think they got a fighter's chance. So why would you maybe take a swing at Jimmy that might hurt your future? Or maybe you do take the swing at Jimmy because the time is now. I think John Cena said something like that. So I think that right now the Grizzlies have a chance, but they scared me with this offense. I don't think they're very good in the half court game, and that's really where it comes down to in the playoffs.
Now, then, real quick, because we have Khalil Ware, we have a 7-footer
Mm.
who, there was a lot of questions about, Khalil Ware, but then there was a lot of questions about Zach Edey, and I think he's been pretty dominant. He was just, he's just been injured. But what do you think about Zach Edey so far? Because I think he's definitely complemented your team, especially helping Jaren Jackson Jr., moving him to the 4.
Okay, well, I do want to talk about Khalil Ware. I love him.
Yes,
Zach Edey.
Khalil Ware's a diamond in the rough, my man.
God, he's amazing. I'm going to talk about him for a second, but Zach Edey, I was against them drafting him. He's a fish out of water. If they're going to run this type of offense, he's a fish out of water. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand why they went and got him. What they're doing right now is they're trying to make him be more of a facilitator. They're trying to bring him away from the basket, where he does a dive to the basket where they can find him maybe in a mismatch. You won't see him post up a big for the most part. Like, he's going to use that size and create a little bit of space, maybe do some pick and rolls every so often. But if there's ever a switch and he can dive in with a smaller person, that's where he's going to eat. And that's what we've seen in the last 10 games. He continues to do that. So I think Edey's fine. His rebounding is atrocious. He's 7 foot, 14. I don't know how tall he is, but he's huge, right? And so he's a huge guy, but he can't rebound well. I don't care what the numbers say. He's just a big body that stands there. Until he can figure that out as a human, as a man, when he grows into that body, I think that IQ about rebounding will come along. But Khalil Ware, I wanted the Grizzlies to draft him. I didn't care if they got him at 9th. I didn't care if they would have went back to 12th. I wanted Khalil Ware because of he is a guy that can help and play off of Jaren so well, and he wouldn't need to do anything early on. And so I think the Grizzlies missed out on Khalil Ware. I think when we look back in 5 years, Khalil Ware will be a consensus top 3 pick for sure in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say something else that popped in my mind. I'm like, with Jaren, he only averages like 6 rebounds a game, sometimes even 5. So that's another guy that you have how tall is he? Like 6'9"?
No, he's a 7-footer.
Is he a 7-footer too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, you guys have problems in the rebounding department, but
yes.
Who's a good rebounding small forward? Jimmy Butler. So going back to Jimmy, and also you said a half court player, just possibly slow the game down in the playoffs, someone who can get you the free throw line, someone who's clutch. So going back to Jimmy though, real quick, how do you think a player like Jimmy, with his strong personality, and we see he has a very strong personality, but also he is a leader. Obviously, he led this Miami Heat team to 2 championships and 3 Eastern Conference finals. So how do you think his personality, play style, leadership style would mesh with this Grizzlies team? Could he be that rental? You mentioned it would be 25 games, and he might not sign that extension, which we can get into in a second. Could be a good thing for you guys, but are you willing to take that on? Like, is he that missing piece, that veteran that can help you and elevate you guys ultimately in the playoffs, which is what matters the most? But the piece here, though, is Triple J. He's going up for an extension. So if he does walk, that's $50 million off your books, right? That you can use for Triple J. So as long as you don't give up the 2 players you mentioned earlier, right? Jalen and Gigi, it could be a win-win for possibly both of us, because we need to get Jimmy Butler off this team. I can't imagine him being suspended for a 4th, a 5th time, a 6th time. Like, it's already been 3. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the on the suspension part, like, he's eventually going to get that money back, or most of that back. That's how it always works in arbitration. And I know people don't talk about that as much because they see that he's losing all this money. He'll get it back, and I think he knows that, and I think his agent knows that. But what Jimmy do you get? That's the question I keep bringing up, is like, do you get the Jimmy that is going to be upset? Are you going to get the Jimmy that wants to kind of play with his hair on fire and to play for that extra extension possibly? So what guy do you get? Do you get screwed with the fact that Jimmy tears his, and God forbid, he gets hurt, tears his Achilles, does something really wrong, and he opts into that, and he's hurt all next year, right? That's the other chance you're taking, is if this guy has a player option on the table, if he does anything wrong, he can go ahead and opt into that in the offseason. And so you're really going to be hampered by that moving forward. And then trying to sign Jaren to a potential supermax extension. Like, there's a lot that goes in that, but it all comes down to what Jimmy Butler do you get? He's acting like he doesn't want to be here in Memphis. So if that's so, you're signing up for a guy that doesn't even want to be there and he won't actually show up and play right. But I just don't know if that's the Jimmy you'd end up getting.
Now, we saw the Fox trade yesterday, and Zach LaVine was finally moved from the Chicago Bulls. So what do you think about the Fox trade, how they didn't even have to give up Castle? Yes, they gave up a bunch of draft capital, but the fact that they were able to keep Castle and pair him now with Fox, Wemby, and they have a great young core going forward, and they still have like 6 first-round picks left to still make a lot of moves. So what do you think about, the Fox trade yesterday, Zach LaVine being moved?
I just want to know what the Spurs and the Lakers GMs are doing to get these dudes just to like give you their players. Like, hey, we don't need any first round picks. Give us our pick back, as the Bulls were saying, as we're sending out LaVine, and then Fox is going to the Spurs for nothing. Like, I know y'all are in the East and y'all don't care about the West, but it's tough out here. Okay, we're having all these teams getting bigger and better, and like, there's somehow nobody's having to pay these large fees. And then so I don't understand it, but the pairing of Wemby and Fox is going to be amazing for the next 8 to 10 years. Like, they're going to be so good. They're going to play off each other so well. I think they both set themselves up for the future, because De'Aaron Fox, this was a big decision. Him leaving Sacramento was money left on the table. I know he was out in California. He's going to Texas, so the income tax will help a little bit. But he left a super max on the table to get moved, and he's going to sign an extension with the Spurs, because if he doesn't, whenever the next team is, if it's not San Antonio, he loses $77 million over that 4-year contract. So for $77 million reasons, he is going to sign an extension with the Spurs for sure. And so the Spurs have him locked up, and they know that. But that pairing is going to be spot on. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, if Luka's not worth the supermax, is De'Aaron Fox worth the supermax? Maybe they're like, the Kings are like, yeah, like, I don't think, because there was no defined number, like a true alpha there. Like, was it him? Was it actually Sabonis? I think that was part of the problem, is that, their top two weren't good enough, essentially, in my opinion. And obviously there's issues with the Sacramento's front office, how they've handled contracts, trades, and whatnot. And they haven't made the playoffs in 16 years. It took that trade for Sabonis, to get there, pairing him up with Fox. So I understand why they maybe were like, okay with trading Fox, maybe because they're thinking the same thing for different reasons, right? Not because he likes to party too much and eat cheeseburgers like Luka, who I can't even imagine is actually 270 right now at this time. That's kind of wild. But what are your thoughts on that too? Because I'm an anti-Laker fan. I hate the Lakers more than any team across any sport. And the fact that the Nico Harrison did this behind closed doors, like in the shadows, like without LeBron knowing, who's obviously the best GM in sports, the past 10 years. So what are your whole thoughts on that scenario?
Which, Daniel, hold on 1 second too. Yep. They did this even without asking Jason Kidd, because you know what I'm saying? Their GM came out and said, this was my decision. Yep. How on earth do you move a franchise player in Luka, which they haven't really had that franchise tag since Dirk? Remember, right. These are all small market teams. Like, prime example. So I wouldn't be surprised, like, if the Memphis Grizzies are like, you know what? We can't give Jaren Jackson Jr. the max. I mean, they just did it with Cat. Because they didn't want to pay Cat like with the Timberwolves, and that's ultimately why they traded him. Not saying that they would do that with Jaren Jackson Jr., but these are all small market teams. So the fact that they didn't even open this up to the league, where they would have gotten 5-6 first-round picks for Luka.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what makes me sick, is the fact that, I don't know, I guess it didn't go through like the right protocols in a sense, because why that some people didn't know that a GM's about to trade your star player doesn't make sense to me at all. Somebody brought up a point of like, do we know if it wasn't like a late night, like, hey, hanging at the bar with my friend, just having a couple beverages, and I just traded Luka Doncic without asking anybody? Did he wake up the next morning and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like, there's a lot that needs to be talked about. I know this wouldn't have happened in David Stern's NBA, because he would have vetoed that just like he did CP3. But it just seems that there's some collusion going on. And I don't want to be conspiracy theory, but it looks like Nico has some ties out there into the Los Angeles organization. And if he's saying, I don't even think I'll be around here in 10 years because I'll be buried in, like what, like I've been a fan for the Grizzlies for 10 plus years. You've probably been a Heat fan for 10 plus years. Like the fans are still going to be here, whether you're here or not being the GM. That's on you. I know it's your job. Like that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't sit right with well with me, the fact that he can make those decisions and he's not going to be around, nor does he care if he is around. So I think this is a weird situation. I think this will be a trade that's honestly thought of and maybe studied for the next, maybe in 20, 30 years, it's looked back as something that's, kind of a black eye on the league as a whole, but also for Nico.
Yeah, that was the worst press conference that I have. Bro, he was so nonchalant and you know what I mean? He just really didn't care. And I'm like, how on earth do you guys do this trade in the middle of the night? And it's like what you just said. It's about the fans. People don't understand, which I think this was about money. They did not want to pay him $320 million or $300+ million. Especially now, they're going to say about the injury concerns and the conditioning. I mean, you guys were in the NBA Finals last season. Every single star gets hurt. There's even worse stars right now: Joel Embiid, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. There's a bunch of other stars that miss games. So you know what I mean? So I just think that they were setting up the Lakers for the future. Bron's probably gone too, but who knows?
Yeah, it's like this is the Mecca, the Mecca West of basketball. This is Hollywood, glitz, glamour, big market team. We need our next star. Ratings are going down. Let's turn LeBron into a mentor with Luka Doncic and pass the torch. Unreal. The fact that they got him for so cheap. And again, I don't want to underrate Anthony Davis because he's having a really good year and he was relatively healthier than most for the past 2 seasons. And so that's still a really good trade chip. But he's 31 and he has an injury history. He's already won a championship. He's on the wrong side of 30 for someone who's had a historic injury past in history. For a guy who's 25 years old, to Martel's point, just took you to the finals, cornerstone of your franchise, a guy who's out of shape but is still able to take you to the finals and average close to a triple-double and almost 30 points per game. I just don't see it. I don't understand. They think they're hedging themselves by not providing him the market value that he probably deserves as a top 3 player. At one point was probably the best player in the NBA. Maybe not, maybe number 2 after Joker, but I just don't see it and understand it. And it's just they wanted to get out of that possible super max, but that's the market value and you have to pay it. That's based on the CBA. If he's eligible for that, you have to give it to him. But I don't know. I'm really upset. We'll see what happens, but we're just in the dark right now with this Jimmy Butler news. We're 3 days away from the trade deadline, and I can't see a world as a Heat fan where we keep Jimmy Butler. I just can't see a world where we do, but anything's possible. Obviously, Luka Doncic getting traded to the Lakers. But before we close out, Daniel, my last question though for you is, what is your prediction with this Jimmy Butler saga? Does the West get even harder? Because you mentioned it's a gauntlet, and will Jimmy Butler get to the Suns where he ultimately obviously wants to go to, which would suck again for the Grizzlies because again it's going to be crazy in the West? Or do you think a dark horse team like the Bucks, maybe your team, the Memphis Grizzlies, or who knows, comes out of the woodwork last minute? Or do you think he stays with the Heat? What's your thoughts on that?
There's no way he's staying with the Heat. That would be the dumbest thing to do. I don't care if you guys send him to the Wizards, dude. Who cares? Listen, there's already been enough of blood boiling so far. Just sending to the Wizards, or if you're just that upset about it, get something. Get Kyle Kuzma if you need to.
Kispert and Kuzma,
exactly. Anybody would be better than losing somebody and having them walk, or having him opt in next year and having to go through this same stuff again. But my prediction would be for the Phoenix Suns, just because their owner's an idiot and he thinks he has all the money and he can just spend whatever he wants. And so I would assume he goes there. The Warriors are a dark horse, in my opinion, because they don't have the capital. They need so much help to get him there. But I know that, in all honesty, they really need Bradley Beal there at Phoenix to somehow approve the trade. I don't know if he would, in all honesty, kind of just, I guess, approve of the trade for this trade clause. But I'm excited to kind of see where this ends up playing out, because Jimmy Butler's got to move somehow, some way. But I do want to share just one more thing on the Jaren Jackson Jr. Supermax. I know Martel was talking about it. This is a small market. I know that people are saying that, okay, well, they might not pay up. Well, the owner of the Grizzlies is not much involved on the daily, the day-to-day basis. Like, he allows his guys to do their thing. They report back. I believe he's the second richest owner. If I'm wrong, he's top 5. Okay, I'll just settle at top 5. But nobody really knows who he is. Like, we do in Memphis, but like outside of that, I don't expect any of y'all to really know who he is, even though he does have a home down in Miami. That's where he lives majority of the time when he's not overseas. But he said and been on record that if they come to me and ask me to pay the tax or go over for whatever reason to pay our guys, I am 100% willing. Now, he is yet to pay the tax, but I think he would be actually willing, because what he bought the franchise for, what he could sell it for in a liquid assets deal, he could easily flip that for a little bit of tax money. But I think that he has enough deep pockets to be able to keep the quality and continue to grow as the value grows for Memphis and any NBA team right now as it continues to skyrocket.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Daniel. Before we hop off, do you want to remind the audience where they can find you online and your work?
Yep. Check us out. Grizz 901 is a live post-game show for the Memphis Grizzlies. It's on Twitter at Grizz 901 Live. I do sports betting as well. Coaching Company, if you want to check that out, it's with Jonathan Coachman. He's the host formerly of ESPN, CBS, WWE.
WWE, yeah.
Yep. So the coach is, I was actually just talking to him right before I came on to this show, but the coach is the man, and he is the guy who drives that show. It's sports betting at 10 a.m. Eastern. Coaching Company is the name. We try to kind of make you laugh a little bit, but also kind of help you cash some tickets. So it's a good show. So you definitely got to check it out.
Awesome. Definitely will. And maybe you can give us some tips offline. Honestly, that'd be huge. So anyway, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Martel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you guys for all the support.